I don't see that we have the authority to all of a sudden impose our system of justice across the entire world. I do not think it's effective. I think it drums up more anti-American hostility more than it achieves justice.
It has nothing to do with national security. Matter of fact, our national security is more jeopardized by permitting this to happen because we're liable to start a war. We're liable to have our military men killed. We're liable to have more attacks on us by terrorists.
Our foolish policy in Iraq invites terrorist attacks against U.S. territory and incites the Islamic fundamentalists against us. Our foreign policy of military interventionism has brought us death and destruction to many foreign lands and loss of life for many Americans. From Korea and Vietnam to Serbia, Iran, Iraq, and now Afghanistan, we have ventured far from our shores in search of wars to fight. There is no evidence that this policy serves the interests of world peace. It certainly increases the danger to all Americans as we become the #1 target of terrorists. Our arrogant policy and attitude of superiority will continue to elicit a smoldering hatred toward us, and out of sheer frustration will motivate even more terrorist attacks against us.
When we went into Iran in 1953 and installed the Shah, yes, there was blowback. The reaction to that was the taking of our hostages, and that persists. And if we ignore that at our own risk. That if we think that we can do what we want around the world and not incite hatred, then we have a problem. They don't come here to attack us because we're rich and we're free. They come and they attack us because we're over there. I mean, what would we think if we were, if other foreign countries were doing that to us?
Why did Fox News not treat Ron Paul better when he's been talking about this stuff for the past 8 years?
To the Republicans, and one of my favorites, Congressman Ron Paul from Texas. I got to say, just as an observer, a relatively new voice in the political conversation these past couple of years, I look at the Republican field, I see, you know, Palin, Bachmann, Pawlenty, Mitt Romney, some interesting people, some smart people in that mix. There's no way any of them are better than you for the Republican nomination. Let's just be, seriously. No, I mean, when you look at your articulation of the actual, I'm not saying your answers are all right. I don't know whether your answers are all right or not. But I do know the way that you frame the debate around the issues that this country faces is the most honest of almost any politician that I deal with. Do you not have an obligation at this point to run for president?
Well, some have argued that case. I thank you for the compliment.
Well, you know, listen, I'm going to harass you on this one because we need the debate. The debate, you have the framing of the debate, as you know, is everything, and you do that so effectively, Congressman. Thank you for the time.
He's hugely popular. He wins our FoxNews.com live polls. People felt that he was the top man in the political debate that we had. We have Congressman Ron Paul from the great state of Texas here. We've got our live chat here on FoxNews.com is blowing up. We have so many supporters on here. Like we said, you hands down won the debate with the viewers here. And they have Bill saying that you are how intelligent you are. Robert is saying this man just tells it like it is, and we need that. They feel that you're someone that speaks directly to them. You're not hiding any of the facts. You lay it out there. And there's many people that agree with you. You've had an incredible career, both as a physician and as a congressman. Why do you think that you are so hugely popular? I mean, not only with Tea Party supporters, but a lot of the electorate that really feel impassioned about your candidacy.
Well, I ask a lot of questions. I try to figure it out. I don't quite understand it, but I think it's the people who feel like they've been left out. A lot of people who come up to me are enthusiastic. They heard me in the debates 4 years ago, and they say, "Oh, you sounded pretty good." But when I really got excited was when I checked your voting record, and you actually voted that way. And I think it was the credibility gained from that. And it's especially true with young people, and I try to lay it out on the line with them about how bad it's going to be, and yet they get enthusiastic and believe there are answers, and the answers can be found in something I think is wonderful, you know, our Constitution, limited government, and get the dependency off government. We can't depend on the government to take care of us, and it's well received by young people. So where are you going to cut? That's the big thing. We're back to that. My proposal, both because I believe in it as well as I think it's good politics, and that is, look at our overseas expenditures. All the money that we spend, it is estimated now we spend over $1 trillion managing our foreign policy, and I don't believe for a minute we're safer for it. So we could cut hundreds of billions of dollars there. I would not start with health care. I do believe in priorities. I just happen to think that welfare aid to big corporations and aid to foreign governments and corporations, all these things, they could be cut first, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we have too much dependency. Even though I would still argue for the case of priorities, I don't believe it's coming. Matter of fact, I'm not too optimistic that we're going to come to grips with this. I think we're heading for a financial catastrophe.
Tonight on the docket, a libertarian hero, a champion of the Constitution, and a stalwart of limited government. He wants to bring the troops home now and end America's involvement in 5 bloody, expensive, and immoral wars across the globe. He wants the government to live within its means and not borrow one more penny to pay back its bills. He's sick and tired of all the money printed and perpetrated by the Federal Reserve that's literally stealing money right out of your bank account. And he wants to end the Fed. And if this champion of personal freedom were able to persuade Congress and the American people of the virtues of limited government, and that it's the only moral and practical solution for a free people and a free society, guess what your income tax bill would be? 0. And with the added bonus that your children won't be on the hook to pay for unconstitutional and unconscionable government welfare and warfare programs that took place long before they were born. Sounds like a great campaign platform to me. And that's why it's great news to hear that he's formed an exploratory committee to run for the Republican nomination for president in 2012. George Washington once said that liberty, when it begins to take root, is a plant of rapid growth. Our first guest tonight is living proof of that. Here now, Texas Republican Congressman. Who else could I be introducing this way but Ron Paul? Congressman Paul, it's a pleasure. Welcome here.
Thanks.
Why do you want to be president of the United States?
Well, it's a pretty good question, because there are days when I'm not sure that's exactly what I want in my life. Because I've said seriously, even though it might sound a little bit different than the others, actually I want to be president, not for the things I want to do, for the things I don't think we should do. Because I don't want to be a president that continues the policing of the world. I don't want to be a president that wants to run your life, and I don't want to be a president that's in charge of the economy. So in a way, it's a negative reason to be president, and that is to influence the society to accept responsibility and show that a president in the executive branch of government shouldn't be king. We don't need a president that is king, and I think that's my main goal, is to show that liberty works and big government doesn't, so therefore I would want to have less power, not more power.
The Constitution says that only the Congress can declare war. But presidents, not just this president, virtually all of his predecessors, at least in the post-World War II era, right, have acted as if they are kings or maybe princes by taking military into harm's way without seeking the permission of the Congress. How bad is that? How wrong is that for contemporary peoples and for the future when the Congress lets the president get away with that?
Yeah, and I like the way you put it. Why does the Congress let them do that? How did we get here? Why did we give up, the Congress give up their prerogatives, their responsibilities? That probably would baffle the founders, because I think they on purposely designed a system where the Congress would be superior to the other branches. Yet now we're the most inferior branch. Government's going to continue, with us, without us, even if we're not there. So it is astounding, but it's just carelessness, but in a way, indirectly, it's with the people, too. The people tolerate the congressmen who ignore the Constitution, right, and just let things go by. So we have drifted a long way away from the intent of the Congress to an intent of the Constitution to make Congress supreme in declaring when we send young people off to die. And this is both a big geopolitical event, but it's also a big financial event when we allow presidents to do this. But the other thing that they have done, and they do this notoriously for all nations seem to have done this throughout history, that wars are almost always paid for by debasing the currency. If they weren't allowed and would not debase the currency, we would be prohibited from getting ourselves involved in so many of these no-win, nonsensical wars that we ought to stop and bring our troops all home. And this view is growing in popularity. But what I'm referring to is the giving up of our empire. The Soviets literally gave up their empire. And we will, for financial reasons, we won't be allowed to have a presence in the Middle East. We won't be allowed to, we won't be capable of paying for the troops in Japan and Germany and doing all these things. And that, to me, will be good. We will draw back, take care of ourselves, take care of our borders, take care of producing wealth here, bring the jobs back, get taxes down low, and balance budgets, and that will be good. So yes, it will be reversed, but I do not foresee that the states will become independent, but more independent than they are now. They will not. They will have to give up the dependence on the federal government, and they will, because the federal government will be proven totally inept. They will have ruined our system. What happened to the Soviet system? They were going to take over the world. The Soviet system collapsed because they had this weird foreign policy of reaching out and occupying territories and thinking that they could conquer Afghanistan. And then they would look and say, what did we do as a people? Oh, yes, we didn't learn a lesson. The British couldn't do it. The Russians couldn't do it. But the Americans can do it. We know how to occupy Afghanistan. We know how to do it. I tell you what, I really believe in the principle of spreading our goodness. But I tell you what, I do not believe our goodness is occupation by militarism and doing it with the use of force.
Do you believe spending cuts need to include the military as well? And if so, won't that be in direct conflict with the GOP agenda for resisting cuts to the armed forces?
Yeah, I guess some are deeply indebted to the military-industrial complex, but I'm sort of from the Eisenhower era, where he and others warned about the military-industrial complex. I want a strong national defense, and if you waste money bombing places and then rebuilding them while our old country's falling down and our borders aren't protected, it's not going to work. So I think a growing number of not only Republicans, but a growing number of independents and Tea Party people realize that you can't say, oh, well, this cut spending for food stamps, but not the military-industrial complex. That won't work. And I think that is really going to be the test. Since World War II, we've embarked in the wrong direction. We've been fighting all these wars and no declaration, so the war power issue is a key issue, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it and not expand this power. But I think we get a pretty good idea about where the executive branch comes from, and I'm not so sure it would be unique for one party over the other. But the current office of the legal counsel to our president has said that it was necessary, it was okay to go to war to defend the credibility of the United Nations Security Council. I think that is an outrage. We're supposed to be defending the Constitution, not the not the United Nations Security Council. But this is not new. We did it in Korea. We ignore it sometimes, and now we ignore it in Libya. The War Powers Resolution, which was set up in '73, was supposed to curtail this. Technically, it was deeply flawed, but it actually legalized war for 60 days, which always drifts into 90, and even our presidents ignore that. So this is a mess, and you know, it's not all that complicated. Why do we complicate this for ourselves unless it's deliberate? Because we have a law. The law is called the Constitution. We're not supposed to go to war unless there's a declaration. We've been fighting this a long time, and the American people are sick and tired of it. It's draining us. It's draining us financially. And now we're into, how many wars are we in now? Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, now Libya. We don't even know to the extent to how much we're involved in these countries. So we in the Congress demand, or should demand, our responsibilities again. It should be up to us when we go to war and not to the executive branch.